Watergate, the scandal that took down a president. All the President's Men tells the story of Woodward and Bernstein, two journalists who followed the money and exposed Nixon's corruption. At the time, it felt like proof that journalism could topple power itself. But looking back today, does this classic feel more like inspiring truth or a dangerous myth? Join us as we dig into Redford and Hoffman's iconic roles, the mythologizing of journalism, and why this movie's legacy may not hold up in our cynical modern world. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hype! We are back now on Foreplay for what I believe is our 18th arc. Congratulations. Oh, wow. We've made it to 18 arcs at this point in time. And by the way,
I'm excited.
Special shout out
to turn into the 18th arc. That's a reference. Duncan gets
special shout out to the guy who commented on our last video on Mandy. I should say, we record these well in advance, so the last video that you will have seen will not have been Mandy, but the last video that was released when we were recording this arc was Mandy, who said that he has watched every episode and 0 of the movies.
Yeah, I know.
Like
Freak.
A complete degenerate.
Freak. What even is the point?
Guy.
That's like exclusively watching news programming from a country you've never visited. What are you doing?
That's the problem. Everyone else thinks that's quaint, Monty, or funny. I don't, because the premise is he just likes listening to us talk about things he doesn't understand. Like that makes it just sound like you're just going to try and kill one of us and wear our skin as a face or something. You know what I mean? Like, what's going on here? Like, there's something wrong with you.
He's a skin killer.
Wow. I will not go that far. So anyway, our latest arc is...
I mean, the joke is I would reference a movie, but he hasn't fucking seen any, so there's no point. There you
go. Our latest arc is going to be journalism. And the movies we have picked today will be...
Goody. You do realize how indulgent that is when you even say out loud. And the next arc, journalism.
Right, I do want to say right from the get-go, this arc was trash. Like, this was pure trash. I don't know why we did this. But
here, so we haven't even finished recording it, and I know what you mean. Like, trash. I can already tell it's going to be sort of like, fucking diminishing returns as we go through, unfortunately. It did sound great, though. Sounded like a great concept,
I don't know. I've seen The Insider recently, and it was still good. So
we'll always have the Insider, guys. We'll always have the Insider.
We'll always have the Insider. We're going to start with All the President's Men from 1976. We will then go to Network, also released in that same year of 1976, which is a very interesting contrast because these films were coming out at exactly the same time. All the President's Men is the all-time journalism classic film about the Watergate investigation from the Washington Post, something that changed the course of American history. And Network is a black comedy satire about the failings of media.
Yeah.
So to see these things come out in the same year is very interesting. We will then be watching The Insider, and we will finish with Salvador. Those are the 4 films. So today, All the President's Men, it won a lot of Academy Awards when it came out in 1976. Has a lot of very famous people behind it, including performances by Robert Redford and a relatively earlier one by Dustin Hoffman as well. So famous actors, excellent acting overall. But why did we pick the journalism arc, gentlemen? Because you guys are the award-winning esports journalists, not me.
Look what he's doing. Look, I'll tell you why. Because there is, like we talked about with past arcs, sometimes you find an archetype of whether it's a period in history or a type of job, and you can pin a story onto it. And like everybody loves the fictitious idea of what a journalist is. And a journalist is, he's a rebel and he speaks truth to power and he fights the system and he exposes inconvenient truths and he does it all in service of a higher power to serve the public. And so obviously there's loads of drama that you can pin onto that. And it just so happened that obviously 2 of America's finest journalists, we'll get to that, Carl Bernstein and Bob Woodward, they had actually done this thing that had essentially led to a president having to resign from office, and that was Richard Nixon. Richard Nixon, of course, was a venal, corrupt beast of a president. But one of the reasons this movie has aged terribly, and one of the reasons the whole Watergate scandal has aged terribly, when you're living in a post-George Bush Jr. fucking world, Watergate's nothing.
It isn't.
Watergate is fuck all.
It almost shows how quaint
Yeah.
politics used to be, Richard. Because first of all, the actual scandal is incredibly minor. It's why actually this movie also is very slow paced, because you're supposed to remember that this movie came out 4 years after the scandal, and you're supposed to be like, oh my god, that's what they were doing. Holy shit! And he was connected with him, and they had money from that. But again, in the modern day, we know politics is corrupt and full of all dodgy stuff, and they're all spied. In fact, the joke is, if people don't know, just the implication that like Obama spied on Trump when he was a presidential candidate would be way more scandalous than this. It just isn't. It just in the modern day we're so jaded to scandal. And then also, like I said on that on some past episodes, like Trump being impeached like 2 times or whatever, and then just going, I'm just going to keep going, means it doesn't mean anything anymore. Yeah. Whereas at the time, like with Nixon, with fucking Clinton, this was a massive deal at the time. In fact, people thought that impeachment meant that you were kicked out. They thought it was that you were fired. Whereas we've learned now it just sort of means you sort of publicly disgraced, but it's up to you if you choose to leave or not. So, no, I know what you mean. The stakes don't even really work for this film anymore. I almost, in a weird way, that's why to watch this film, you almost have to like delete all of history afterwards and imagine you are in 1976. Yep. If you do that, or the early 70s, then you can sort of get into the premise. I know what you mean. The actual big scandal here, mate, think about the scandals with like let's just say like prostitutes. There's a million more scandalous things have happened since then. Yeah.
I mean, look, just to quickly set it up. Obviously, I'll just say, for those that don't watch the movies, you sort of do need to know a little bit about the Watergate scandal, and what the Watergate scandal essentially was there was the DNC, the Democratic National Committee headquarters, were based in a hotel called the Watergate Hotel, and a bunch of dudes got caught breaking into it in the middle of the night for purposes that still really haven't been determined, but the assumption is it was because of what they found on their possession, was that they were essentially going to plant spying devices and on the chairperson of that committee, and then Nixon was going to use that information to tailor his campaign. It was to get an insight into his political rivals.
It was his re-election campaign, exactly. To be clear, because he was already president.
Yep.
And the people who were breaking in were former government, intelligence.
One was
operatives.
an intelligence operative, and then didn't they have 4 fucking Cuban dudes that were left over from some sort of shit that they didn't, had them in. But ultimately, there was the CRP. It was the Committee for the Re-election of the President, and basically they broke into where the Democrat Party were going to have their big conference, big committee, all of the intelligence that would have been going through there, and they were looking to essentially plant spying devices there. And then it's like, okay, that sounds really bad. Yeah, it is. It is a really, really bad, horrible thing to do. Nixon really raised the bar for political corruption, actually, for the time. But just as a reminder, in the post 9/11 landscape, George Bush turned the entire intelligence community into a spying operation on its own citizens, illegally harvesting information from its populace for the purposes of, just keeping an eye on if everyone was safe or not. So it's like, if you sort of look at that and what happened with the NSA.
And by the way, that was continued through the Obama presidency.
Yep.
So it wasn't like it was shut down. PRISM, which was the system that was used to spy on the American populace, was maintained for a long time.
And, look, without wanting to get, because you can talk about George Bush now and no one really cares, because it's like, that is ancient history. But if you bring up anyone else, that's bad. But obviously everything that's happened in the Trump years, and by the way, both sides of the aisle, I mean, this is nothing, is it? It's nothing, of course. Of course you would spy on your political opponents. Of course you do.
Well, I do think it's important to remember what was going on at the period, because I think prior to Vietnam and Watergate, there was a pretty high level of trust in the American government, and people believed that the American government was adhering to noble American ideals. And I
You're
think
not that many years, Monty, from JFK, who's a very beloved
Yeah.
figure who people to this day, even though they know the things he's done, idealize him as like some
idealized.
American
Everybody
hero
was
patriot.
weeping
Yeah.
when he was assassinated. Yeah, of course, in the 60s. And so, what happened was this period, because so many things came up. It was not only Watergate, it was the Pentagon Papers, it was the deceptions around the Vietnam War that were also perpetuated by Nixon, because in this same time period in the Vietnam War, Nixon, during his re-election campaign, was basically sabotaging the Vietnam War peace talks between the North and the South, because he was trying to use it as a lever to get reelected, because he was the guy who was going to solve the peace. So he was telling, the North and the South, especially the North Vietnamese, hey, don't go to peace with South yet. I'm going to give you a better deal when I'm president again. And then there was also obviously his reliance on Henry Kissinger and the illegal bombing campaigns in Cambodia and Laos. So there was a lot of, let's say, shenanigans afoot with Nixon. So it wasn't just this. And so I think, like you say, it may seem somewhat quaint now in retrospect, but at the time, especially because this movie, the book, All the President's Men, that this was based off of, which was the real reporting by Bernstein and Woodward, right, was, a major watershed moment in American political history, and did end up resulting in the tapes coming out, because Nixon had voice-activated recorders in his office, and then there was this back and forth with the government where he wouldn't give them up, basically, and then he was giving censored transcripts, and then finally they got their hands on the actual tapes, and the tapes did contain the smoking gun, where he basically was like, yeah, I did it. And also he told the FBI not to stop their investigation of this as well, which is why in this movie, Deep Throat, who is the guy who's named after a porn film from the 70s, he was actually, we found out later, the deputy director of the FBI, and he was leaking the information because the FBI's investigation into the scandal had been shut
The
down.
intelligence community leaking things to the press, eh? Jesus. What next?
By the way, that's also another reason why, in a way, though, even though I actually think this film held up quite badly. I was kind of shocked. I thought it would be better than it was. But the reason why I do agree, if you do an arc on journalism, this is essential. It's like, first of all, purely just as a cultural artifact, every fucking scandal has gate attached to it because of this story. So if you don't know this, you actually are sort of lost. And then also, I'll even add in there, like, if you think about, like, even the idea that, like, revealing a scandal, you become a celebrity journalist. It all starts here. This really is like one of the genesis points of a lot of like conceptual stuff that since is taken for granted in journalism.
It's true. I mean, because look, because we talked about this in the adaptation episode, it's worth noting that obviously All the President's Men is the book by Carl Bernstein and Bob Woodward, the two journalists that were brought together by the Washington Post to cover all the runoff of stories from the initial Watergate break-in. But what's really interesting is, because Robert Redford had a personal interest in this, he didn't want the movie to be what the book was. And the book was all about everything that the Nixon cronies were doing. And basically, he said, no, we need to make this movie about the journalists and how they uncover it. And so what you end up with is a fantastic procedural look at what it's like to be a journalist. And spoiler, it is not interesting. It is not salacious. It is not exciting. It is, I mean, like, any actual journalist that's done any form of investigative
it's like the
journalism.
French Connection was about police statements. This is about chasing down leads
I
and
would
phone calls
argue
and visits
this
that go
movie
nowhere.
has a way more glacial pace than even the French Connection.
It's
this
wild.
is a very
the amount of
70s
phone
movie.
calls where I'm just like, is nothing trimmed out of this scene? Like,
well, how do you think your check got into Barker's account, though?
Yes.
Could I please speak to Mr. Clark McGregor?
One moment, I'll
Thank
connect
you.
you.
Thank you.
This is really like dial. Sorry, can you hold while I'm trying? Like, what the cut that? Like, because here's the problem, though, Richard. This is where I actually think, in a way, though, on the one hand, I admire the artistic attempt, but I just don't think it worked as entertainment. I think they were actually trying to show, built into the movie, how incredibly slow, boring, and based around just finding facts journalism is. Like, think about the central, like, the way the story is paced, Monty, is essentially that even though you're, as the person watching the journalist, you're knowing this is all correct and they're getting closer and closer and closer, but notice how until you can actually get it over the line, it's just your boss is constantly going like, have you properly checked that? Like, can we really do something with that? Yeah, but that's a crazy thing you're stating there. Like, essentially it just shows actually like how unsexy journalism is. It isn't something where like it's obvious that like the bad guys are after you and you've just got to get the thing done in time. The joke here is just like not convincing your bosses would have killed this story about 20 times in the movie. It was ridiculous.
But like, so I've only ever worked in a newsroom once, very briefly, and it was like a small local paper, so it's not even comparable to this. But the details they get right are absolutely on point. The cubicle setup is quite typical of a newsroom. This is because obviously your editor needs to see that you're at your desk and you type in, you're on a deadline, you got copy, you have to get in there. And the attention to detail is fantastic. And then also the process.
Richard, I'm going to stop you there because before you continue, they actually, as part of the design of this movie, went to the Washington Post newsroom. They couldn't film it there because it's an active newsroom. They measured everything, bought the same desks that they had from the same manufacturer, painted them the same color, and created basically a perfect reproduction at a soundstage. And then they took boxes of stuff from the Washington Post reporters to put on the desks. And apparently the reporters who saw it thought it was like the real room. So they were very, very faithful to the recreation of that environment.
Oh, yeah, by the way, you also forget as well, like a key point I was going to make is, this is also where this is influential. You have to always remember the year this came out. There hasn't been like a West Wing or some Aaron Sorkin thing where everyone's behind the scenes and they're all doing that. Like, this is essentially like where that stuff comes from. Like, you've probably never seen a real newsroom before. You probably in this era think of a journalist as just the guy with the notepad. Like, so what's going on here, sir? And what about like, you don't think about the whole machinery behind it and the editorial process and all that shit.
Yeah, and it is really very insightful as to how it works. The pitch meetings where the editor of the publication comes in and you've got all the editors of each of the departments, and he says, right, what are we doing for national, what are we doing for sports, what are we doing for this, and you want to hear what's going to go in the paper. I mean, brilliantly observed. And Jason Robards plays the main editor guy. He won an Oscar for his performance here. He's Earl from fucking Magnolia. If you harken back to that, where he played that role when he was actually dying of cancer himself. He played Earl dying of cancer, being nursed by Philip Seymour Hoffman. Both of them now dead. Because
they're taking method acting
it's
too far.
Crazy, isn't it? So, but anyway, that's all brilliantly realized. It's got to be said, that is, and also as well, like the back when editors had a kind of what's the phrase? They had a sensibility about it would be terrible if we got this wrong. And he gives that speech. Jason Robards' character, he gives that speech on 2 occasions in the movie. He says
it's actually, we paired the first 2 movies in this arc well, because this movie is sort of it now seems quaint and antiquated, Richard. The idea of like, should this even be published? Like, this could have serious implications. And then Network is already on some like TMZ shit. Like, if it bleeds, it leads. Like, it's almost like fucking hell. And then the same year it came out. It's mad.
And look, I think in terms of, there's no doubt which of the 2 movies aged better. Because, look, this is the problem I have with this movie. All journalists have a love-hate relationship with this movie. And you love it because it is a story about 2 journalists that will not give up on a story, that trust their instincts, trust their skills.
Whose editor is behind the boys, very crucially.
Yeah, exactly. You're backed by the masthead to the hilt. And also, quite critically, this is a time you could speak truth to power. You know, this went somewhere. It actually led to the most powerful man supposedly in the free world having to resign. That just doesn't happen anymore. And if you look at what Washington reporting is now, if you look at what an embarrassment it is compared to all of the shoe leather and all of the effort that went into just getting this one story over the line and it leading to this cascading series of accountability, it doesn't exist anymore. It doesn't exist. What you have now is you have this horrible machine where it's like the journalist will sometimes be a journalist, but also he can work on a campaign. I mean, you know, in the Obama era, turbocharged this. People from newsrooms and news networks getting appointed into positions. People who were in positions in government going into newsrooms despite having no credible qualification to do so. We've got that right now with Jen Psaki and MSNBC, right? Like, by the way, she took a job with a news network while she was still the press secretary of the White House, and not a single journalist objected to this and called it a conflict of interest. That's where we're at now. Like, if you look at where we're at now, it's actually disgusting what American journalism has become. And if you're a passionate journalist and maybe you watched this movie as a kid and you thought to yourself, well, wow, like that's going to be me, I'm going to do that. Well, unfortunately, not even the people in this movie exist anymore in the sense of what they went on to become.
You know, and this is very nostalgic for me, Richard, because I grew up partially in this environment because my grandfather was the editor-in-chief of the Oakland Tribune newspaper, and then he owned his own news corporation in San Francisco. Right. So when I was a kid, I would go to the office with my grandparents and they would have me do like data entry and pay me nothing, but I would be sitting in the newsroom while all this shit was going on. So I have very fond memories of these kind of environments and being inside of them and seeing what my grandparents did.
You know,
that's fascinating.
The journalist, you know, growing up at the time I grew up in, 80s Britain, the journalist was very often framed as a hero, you know, like, and anyone that violated the sort of sanctity of journalism was reviled, you know, like.
But my grandfather was the guy who really believed in the power of the press and the transformative power of journalism. He was actually one of the people who got the Freedom of Information Act in America rolling. Yeah. He was one of the instrumental people. Yeah, I mean, so like he was all about using journalism to dig into the government.
It was a real thing. Journalism was at one point a profession to be admired. I mean,
I'm just saying that was my grandfather. So this is like the ideals that he taught me.
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah. And by the way, the idealistic aspect of the movie is absolutely perfect. It's a wonderful message movie in that sense. That if if you're dedicated to the pursuit of truth and you work hard and you're willing to make sacrifices to your own personal life, then you can get the truth out and incredible things can happen and positive movements for society can happen. That's just not true anymore. That isn't true at all. And, you know, look, there might be one story every year or, a handful of stories every year that might make you think it is. But we live in a time of cover-ups. We live in a time of zero political accountability. We live in a time where journalists, particularly in America, are too cozied up to the levers of power. They value those book deals and they value that access more than they value the truth. And look, people are going to not like this part, so just tune out, but I'm right. We just lived through 4 years of where we just had a dementia-addled president in the White House. Everybody knew he had dementia. They had a guy dressed up as a fucking Easter bunny corralling him around. We invented a new term called cheap fake to pretend he wasn't just wandering around drooling. The motherfucker couldn't get to the end of a sentence. And it's like a Rorschach test for how politically broken you are in your brain if you say things, but Trump has dementia too, Trump has dementia too, Trump has dementia. If you start doing that, right, you're mentally ill. Like that guy was unwell, and we now know, he not only hid what is very clear and obviously some sort of cognitive impairment from the public, so clearly not fit for office, right, the highest office in the land. We also know he had a cancer diagnosis now as well, because he has a type of cancer that is so slow, like this movie, that he must have had it for fucking years already for it to even show as a diagnosis. And yet we've got journalists coming out now and saying we just missed the story. And isn't it weird that you always miss the stories about the political party you align yourself to, and yet you overly scrutinize the stories about the political party you don't subscribe to the point where you always end up on the wrong side of the issue. We're doing it right now. Like, at the time of recording this, guys, we're literally recording it when everyone is coming out and pretending Washington isn't a crime-infested shithole because Trump said it was a crime-infested shithole. Spoiler, right? It might, the crime rates might be down. The crime rate in Washington is 6 times higher than New York City. So process that. Right, it is a shithole. It is a shithole.
I mean, to be fair, New York's very safe, but yes.
New York's a shithole too.
Depends if you're on the subway.
Yeah, exactly. So
I've been on it many times. Fine.
By the way, one thing that Richard's alluding to here, though, another thing that obviously at the time when this came out in the 70s could not exist because we hadn't had the decade since. But one of the biggest things that low-key sort of ruins the vibe, even though it has nothing to do with the movie, it's years later, is that the very heroes of the movie, which aren't fictional, they're real people, went on to completely use literally this bank of credit that they built up from being heroes to, no joke, they were literally people where they were almost just wheeled out to go now say bad things about Trump. That's all they've done for the last,
forget that.
10 years.
Let me tell you about Woodward. Right?
Like some hack shit, you know.
This is how much of a hack Bob Woodward actually turned out to be. So think about it. You know, he's Robert Redford. Right. By the way, I've got some stories about them.
Green casting if you're a fucking journalist, by the way. You know.
Neither of these people.
70s Robert Redford's playing you, mate. You had it made,
neither of these people are good looking or charismatic. Because you're a journalist. You're obviously you're a homunculus. You're a fucking chud with no social skills. You got something wrong with your brain.
There's a reason you're behind a typewriter.
Exactly.
Yeah, of course.
So anyway, Woodward. This is how I came to despise Bob Woodward. He was obviously, when I started writing about politics, it was the George W. Bush years. You know, I'd had a vague interest in it when I was, very young teens because of everything that was going on with Clinton and, the LA riots and this type of stuff. But then basically I was a bona fide political correspondent for a university paper back when George W. Bush was elected, and I wrote about all of the changing times of like 9/11, everything that was going on. Bob Woodward was trotted out, and he defended George W. Bush. Bob Woodward, the fucking genius behind toppling Nixon, honestly believed there were weapons of mass destruction. It never occurred to him for a second that the Bush administration might be lying. He wrote 6 books on George Bush and 9/11.
Holy shit!
Right. I think was it 6 books? 4 books. Sorry, 4 books.
Still wild.
Because he just had that level of access with the camp, and like I say, he is publicly on record as having said to the general public that no, there are no weapons of mass destruction. It would be impossible for there to be no weapons of mass destruction, and then later recanted it. And then it's like, if you look at Bernstein, now Bernstein was a much more interesting cat if you know about the. If you know about how they operated over there, because he was the upstart journalist that was about to get fired, and Bernstein was the better writer of the two. Bernstein was a features writer. He had incredible flowery, prose, and he ended up like kind of similarly propelling into this like stratosphere of celebrity journalism that very few get to. You want to know which political figure he did a biography on? Hillary Clinton.
These guys, it's so crazy because think about it, right? To use modern vernacular, they're the guys that originally are attempting to drain the swamp. 20, 30 years later, they're like the fucking chief fucking custodians of building up the swamp. What is this? This is some crazy heel turn.
Not to mention... But Bernstein also did a biography on the Pope, Pope John Paul II, and he was very much in the machine by that point.
No scandals there.
That's what I mean.
Fucking hell. Who next? What, before he dies, is he going to do one about how Satan was actually a good guy? Fucking hell, bro. This guy's... Where does it end? Idi Amin maybe misunderstood.
Yeah.
You know,
So this is the problem. Like they were able to kind of commit themselves and commit their efforts to bringing down Richard Nixon, predicated on something, by the way, that was incredibly... I mean, the amount of digging they had to do to tie all this together is exemplary investigative journalism. I mean, it's beyond a joke, and the film does a really good job of catching that. But you fast forward a few decades, and they are establishment cronies that have got so used to being adjacent to power, they no longer question it. And this is a fundamental problem we've got.
Well, also, it's really dangerous in their case, too, because once they have the cachet of revealing the truth and calling truth to power, for them to just rubber stamp people is
Woodward
really
and Bernstein,
an abdication of their
Woodward
duties,
and
I would
Bernstein
say.
as a label is synonymous with truth to power journalism. People used to make that joke all the time. All right, Woodward and Bernstein. You would say that if like some fucking journalist was being a tough edit or being a bit uppity and fucking, demanding, to take on this particular story. Or if you wanted to be derisory about someone's work, you would go Woodward and Bernstein, ladies and gentlemen, and it would be like a TMZ article about like, Hulk Hogan's penis or whatever, And it's fucking unbelievable that not only were they incapable of monitoring their own trajectory, it never occurred to them that they might be the bad guy at some point along the line. But yeah, like you said, they ultimately advocated for fucking some of history's monsters. Like, I mean, like George coming out and saying, I am sure, Bob Woodward, is sure that there are going to be weapons of mass destruction. Are you fucking mental? Like, what a mad thing to say. But people died to try and get the truth out to the general public. There was journalists that were persecuted in Britain over this. We had whistleblowers that were, let's just say, they died in mysterious suicide circumstances
in a forest,
exactly, right?
Whatever, yeah.
So that this war was vitally important to what George Bush and the power machine in America wanted. And anyone that was willing to come out and be a useful idiot, and by the way, I don't think Bob Woodward was being a useful idiot. I think he was just being useful in the sense that it was a very good quid pro quo. He got a lot of book deals out of the access he had to the Bush administration. But also, bizarrely, for someone that had such liberal sensibilities, he was at the heart of a bit of a feud with the Obama administration. People, again, won't accept this, but it is just true. The Obama years were a very tough time for journalism. It was very fractious between the political party that was in power and journalists. Obama ruminated about just banning Fox News from ever having access to the White House ever again. Funnily enough, CNN and MSNBC and all the other networks filed an amicus brief in solidarity with Fox News, something that absolutely wouldn't happen now.
And he also made it legal, quite literally. One, he made it legal to actually propagandize the American public. He actually changed that act that they had, like the Ment Act or whatever the fuck it's called. And then the other one was he himself put loads, through his government, etc., put loads of money essentially into like sort of funding journalism itself in a way that like has an obvious conflict of interest if you're the leader of a country as well. So no, I know what you mean. Like that's the worst thing. The problem with this movie is it's almost like a fantasy movie when I watch it, Rich, because I'm like, I don't recognize this world at all.
Either.
Like, I get the idea that Once Upon a Time did exist. That's why I was saying to Monty, this film, it's why if you are a journalist, you have to put this movie in here, because in many ways, this is the movie you're dreaming of being in if you want to be a journalist. Like, this is what you would tell yourself around a campfire, what journalism could be, isn't it?
Yeah, and look, just to tie off the point about the real life stuff, the Press Freedom Index went down massively under Obama. I know, like, everyone goes, oh, but Trump was calling him fake news, and people at their rallies were booing them and booing the press, and he called the press the enemy of the people, which he never did. He said that a fake news media is the enemy of the people. Spoiler.
Was also, by the way, the
definition,
term fake news was invented by Hillary Clinton's campaign. I know people like to forget that with detail,
course.
fact.
So, but anyway, there was a journalist called James Rosen who, Obama fucking they spied on him. and they used like it was some like war powers to fucking get all of his shit. People don't know about this stuff, and it's like it's really you can come into this movie and go, wow, look, the journalists walked around and did a bunch of phone calls and they got the man, and wow, isn't it great? Holy shit! Like that world is dead. It just doesn't exist. It hasn't existed for decades. Those same two heroes in this movie turned out to be absolute fucking hacks that loved their fucking celebrity and the smell of their own farts, and they betrayed all of their journalistic values to go out and stand for pieces of shit.
I mean, I'll tell you, this was also, I mean, unfortunately, the telling of this story, it was very fictionalized from the beginning, because one of the interesting things I found out while doing research for this episode was that, so Robert Redford, prior to acting in this film, while the book about All the President's Men was still being written, he was calling Woodward and Bernstein, and he was helping them craft the narrative of their book that would then be turned into a movie. So he basically advised them to write the book as a procedural, to entertainify it, and then from that book, he then was supposed to be the producer of this movie. He was not supposed to act in it, and then the studio was like, "Hey, we're spending too much money on this movie. We need you to be in it so that it can make money." Because it's expensive to make this film. And so basically Robert Redford was manipulating the story from the beginning. He manipulated the creation of the book about the Watergate scandal, which then was transformed into this film. So, it being basically journalism porn was deliberate, and it was Hollywoodified while it was still a book, which is weird. And then it was then further Hollywoodified, obviously, in the adaptation and the implementation in this film. So it was very, very deliberately supposed to be the shining journalism ideal the entire way through, before it was even committed to film.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's just one of those where it's like, I would love to believe that this world still existed, and I would love to believe that this movie is an accurate representation of what being a journalist can be like. But I know enough about, having covered American politics now for, I started in, 99, 2000. So, 25 years, it just is, it isn't this. It cannot, it will never be this ever again.
And clearly this also inspired many Hollywood writers, because you mentioned Aaron Sorkin. We wouldn't have had the Newsroom with Jeff Daniels without his film.
Oh, the West Wing.
Here's what I'll say about this movie. Certainly in terms of its influence, it's unavoidable. Like anything that talks about journalism has this idealistic, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, narrative. The editor comes in and goes, "How sure are you, Jablowski? Are you sure?" And then, "No, stand by my reporting. Of course, I got 3 sources." Editor, "Right, I'm sticking with you. But if it's wrong, this is the First Amendment. The First Amendment crumbles if you're wrong. No, it's gonna be fine. Those are the stakes. Look at me. I'm drinking Alka-Seltzer and smoking a cigar." All of the cliches that you've seen in every journalistic movie pretty much stem from this, because
even the classic line,
"Follow the money." Follow the money is from this. Follow the
comes from this.
By the way, not in the book.
You tell me what you know, and I'll confirm. I'll keep you in the right direction if I can, but that's all. Just follow the money.
It was never in the book. They were never told to follow the money.
That makes it just sound like Robert Redford's like, we should really add the line, "Follow the money." That would really tie this all together.
100%. That is what happened.
Really, holy.
They needed. Even in their journalistic message movie, they needed a motherfucking catchphrase. So follow the money, which
in some ways, by the way, makes it seem like the making of this movie was more like, when we get to it, the movie Network. It was just people sat cynically in an office. Like, for numbers, we really need like a slogan though. Like, yeah, it's great that you got the president and all that, but like, what sort of could tie this together? The catchy phrase, beat all the kids are gonna love. Like, what are you talking
about?
Well, no,
it literally is build it and they will come, but for fucking journalism essentially. And the funny thing is,
ghost journalism.
Everybody uses that phrase just incorrectly now. They always say, like, follow the money, but, like, in the context of the film, he's being told, like, don't look over here, like, look over there, because if you look over there and you follow where the money goes to, it'll actually reveal what you're doing. You're being distracted by this. Focus on this, right? But when people say follow the money, they just go, where money goes, bad is bad. Like, you know what I mean? It's just given another phrase for fucking actual retards to just use, divorced from any context or meaning. Yeah, you follow the money bad and people bad when money go bad. Yeah, wicked. You're nailing it. You're Bob Woodward. Love you. So this is the problem. I mean, look, we'll segue into doing a review of the film rather than a review of my own dissatisfaction with where modern journalism is headed to. So, the film. It starts out terribly, right? Let's just put cards, and it ends terribly. Let's just put the cards on the table. It starts in the most, like, am I in a film now kind of way, right? So this is why I never want to hear you criticize Night Moves ever again. Night Moves gives you something right on there. Right.
You know, Richard, it is possible for me to not like multiple things. I don't know if you have that power.
Not me, never me. So anyway, it starts out pretty boring, but when it gets good, when the movie ramps up, is that it's when you see Robert Redford and Dustin Hoffman, both of whom are excellent in this film, and understanding their idiosyncrasies as people. They did a very good job of bringing to life the fractious nature of their relationship, because while Woodward and Bernstein is like, you know, it's like a Thorin and Richard Lewis kind of, you know, like pairing. They've worked together for all this time. Actually, those two didn't really get along all that well. They were very, very, very different people. There was not a lot of overlap, and people have often theorized that's why they did such a good job together, because, you know, basically Bernstein was a big ideas guy with flowery prose, and he could like, in his mind, you know, kind of formulate where the story might go and where we should maybe look and how this might work. But Bob Woodward was the boots on the ground, very softly spoken, polite guy. You know, he was the guy that went out and made sure it got done. He was the nuts and bolts that held up the fucking stanchion, you know.
How's it going? What are you doing? Polishing. You what? Polishing.
What's wrong with it?
Nothing. It's good.
Then what are you doing with it?
I'm just helping. It's a little fuzzy.
May I have it?
I don't think you're saying what you mean.
I know exactly what I mean.
Not here. I can't tell from this whether Hunt works for Coulson or Coulson works for Hunt.
May I have it,
And
please?
some of your conclusions
May I
aren't
have
there.
it?
Yes, I'm not looking for a fight.
I'm not looking for a fight either.
I'm just aware of the fact that you've only been here 9 months.
What does that got to do with anything?
Well, I've been in the business since I'm 16.
What are you saying?
Well, I'm trying to tell you that if you'd read mine and then read yours...
May I
then-
read yours?
Yeah.
And so obviously you
And it's also worth noting that they both spent a lot of time with the original journalists in order to learn this part. And I think what's very interesting is that they memorized all of each other's lines as well, so that when they did scenes together, they could interrupt each other or finish each other's thoughts very fluidly, which adds a lot to the chemistry of this movie. I mean, their dynamic is the core good part of this film.
It does. And it does feel very believable. And, you know, to Duncan's point about, like, whoa, they should have cut these parts out. They very clearly left in ad-libs in this movie. There's even one bit where Robert Redford just makes a mistake. He's on the phone to someone that's talking Spanish, and he goes, anyone speak English? Spanish? And he very obviously flubbed the line, but they left it in because that's just like what it's like in the newsroom. You're working on deadline. You're not getting a lot of sleep. You're on your third cup of coffee. You know, you're gonna make mistakes. You're not gonna be sharp and erudite all of the time. That's just how that goes.
Do you speak English?
No, yo no hablo inglés, señor.
Momento. Hey, you guys speak English? Or you guys speak Spanish?
Señor, ¿con quién quiere hablar, por favor? Más despacio.
Señor.
Sí, sí, dígame. Yo no hablo inglés, señor. ¿Por qué no llama después?
Never mind. Thank you. De nada.
Contéstele a la señorita.
Thank you. Never mind.
And so, look, I think they did a good job of capturing the essence of who these people were, although whether or not it's an accurate portrayal, that leaves a lot to be desired. But on top of that, they did a really good job of getting that chemistry, that dynamic. Look, what if we did this? But I've already thought of that, and then we do this. No, what if we do that? What if we do that? And also, I think from a procedural aspect, do you know how many times as an investigative journalist, this is going to make people real uncomfortable. There are times you just got to bluff. There are times you just got to bluff.
Oh, think about the scenes where he's like, oh, yeah, of course, yeah, I know you worked for the CIA. I know what you mean, Richard. Yeah. Essentially, that game is part of how, because essentially what you're doing is showing the person, even if it's incorrectly, that you have information they already have themselves. So then they feel comfortable saying it to you. No, that's a classic play, unfortunately, yeah. Especially if the stakes are like this, it's something really serious, not something frivolous.
Put it this way, if you need confirmation of something that you are 99% sure of, but remember, and this is the truth I've always lived by, 99% ain't good enough for me. It's never been good enough for me. I've got to know. So sometimes, and this is what I love about this movie, they do it on 2 occasions. You have to misrepresent how much you know. And so you've got to float a statement of fact that isn't a statement of fact. And you float it to a source and you go, look, I know obviously Duncan got paid, right? And so we can skip past that part. I just want to know how much Duncan got paid. And then they go, she knows Duncan got paid. Well, was it more than 25,000? And then they go, yeah. And suddenly, in answering the second question that you wouldn't have got to unless you'd floated the first premise as a matter of fact, you get 2 answers for the price of one, essentially. And hate to say it, but obviously I've done that. I've had to do that at times where it's like one source has told me something. The second source that definitely knows, that definitely can confirm it, says they don't want to talk about that. So how do I get them to talk about that in a way that they feel comfortable with? And therefore, I get closer to the truth. The part where it's silly in the film is the part where he goes, now look, mister, I'm going to hang up the phone. I'm going to count to 10. And if you hang up, then that means the story's wrong. But if you stay on the phone for 10 seconds, the story's right. And then
that is absolute nonsense. I know that
you would never do that. You would.
That's just some silly, fucking
that's classic Hollywood
performative thing for the cameras.
It's Hollywood contrivance. Because ultimately, in that moment, I mean, the guy goes, "Right, so you got it straight now at the end." Okay, why didn't you just fucking say, you dickhead? This is the same thing. What is this insane fucking rigmarole? We've just gone through it. So obviously. But by the way, if you were being bugged or monitored, well, no, but look, he didn't technically see anything, so I won't have the CIA shoot him in the face. That's not going to spare your life, is it, you fucking mad bastard? So that is a deeply stupid scene, by the way. That has no place in a movie about journalism. But everything else really, really holds up. And I don't care, by the way, if Bernstein, they're both still alive. I don't care if Bernstein turns around and says, well, that actually did happen. I don't give a fuck, mate. It was stupid in real life, then, you fucking animal, right? Like, you know what I mean? You just sometimes you also have to be bold with a source and go, look, man, if you're not going to fucking tell me, your silence infers exactly what I need to know. Thank you, bye. We're not doing the count to 10 trick, right? We're not doing that. So, but other than that, I mean, to get an insight into what an investigative journalist does, go into the library, pulling the documents, flicking through paper after paper after paper, that wonderful zoom out in the library, which for some reason...
That's a great shot, by the way.
Great shot, awesome, yeah. It gives you that circular, almost like hypnotic thing going on of just like, holy shit, how boring must their day have been. It gives you a concept of like scale and time, and then they leave and they've got nothing for it. I mean, they and then they even speculate as they're leaving the library. They go, oh, we jumped off too soon. We played our cards too soon, and they've pulled all the evidence. Another very real concern. Shout out to Sean Gares one time. So there's lots of very insightful moments in this movie that if you've ever done a day of investigative journalism in your life, you'll just recognize and go, fuck yeah, that is how it goes. Even right up to the anxiety and the way that 15 minutes before the end of the movie, they publish the story and they're told it's wrong. and everyone's hating on him, saying you got the fucking you got a story wrong. They're denying it. The Washington Post name is being dragged through the mud. I mean, by the way, obviously, again now the irony of the Washington Post.
Imagine the Washington Post being an incredibly prestigious, publication that really stands for the truth, Richard, and is sticklers for the truth.
Like definitely never.
And would never get involved with dirty money.
I mean,
or anything
not only that.
I
mean, like, we're how many years away are we from the Washington Post? Was it Washington? No, actually, this was the New York Times. I shouldn't besmirch the Washington Post. But anyway, with the whole fucking austere scholar thing about that fucking terrorist, that
they'll have done their own version of that.
No, but
come on.
This is what I do. I've got a podcast debunking all the shit media narratives, and all the time they get it fucking wrong, and it just like.
I mean, my joke with the Washington Post is, in light of who owns it and what their current stance has been the last few years, all of a sudden democracy dies in darkness, stops being like, a wise statement. It sounds like it's their mission statement.
Exactly, and so unfortunately. The Washington Post aspect of it as well. This is a movie that harkens back to when it was the paper of record. It really was. Like, New York Times and Washington Post were like just the gold standard of American journalism. If you wrote there, you were somebody. You mattered. And you have to get it right. And so the stakes in this movie, when they fucking think they've got it wrong, and it's like, well, we might get sued over this. I might have to resign. You'll have to resign. The idea of accountability in journalism.
Oh, and remember as well, another thing that is also aged terribly, unfortunately, was the notion that if you get through, though, Richard, not only do you expose the corruption, the bad guys get caught, everyone heralds you, and then you win what at the time was the ultimate goal, the Pulitzer Prize. By the way, another thing, don't look at that, guys. That'll also really depress you. That's not it's not what you imagine it is. But again, this really is the mythos of journalism. It really is.
Yeah, and so ultimately, and unfortunately, that while I recognize a lot of what's happening here, it just doesn't happen anymore. Like, if a journalist gets a story right, what the Trump years should make abundantly clear to everyone is that journalism has always been looking for an excuse to play fast and loose, because sticking to the rules are unbelievably hard. You might know something. You might have heard something a million times. You might know it to be true. But what can I point to that shows I actually knew?
Isn't this why, Richard, for people who don't know, here's a good side tangent to take for a second. This is why anyone who was a real journalist isn't just like, well, it's cool that you have the TMZ rumour type. The joke is in the Monday TMZ, it's actually fairly good, but, they're sort of like, think about roster leaks in CS, etc. The reason why we not only look down on that, we actively despise those people, is those are people who sometimes know nothing and are guessing, or know, say, 40% of what could be real, and they go, well, no point just sitting on this and not doing anything with it. I should publish it in case it's right. Whereas, as you say, Richard, there are stories that are 99% nailed on. You know completely this did happen, but you don't have the hard evidence to prove it, where you have to let that story die. And that is completely the opposite mentality.
Yeah, totally. And look, that's the fundamental problem. Like it's what journalism did in the Trump years. It gave itself permission to cheat. It gave itself I mean, quite literally. I got really despondent about the state of American journalism when I was seeing journalists come out and go, "We can't fight fascism with objectivity." Like, the problem with it all is it's like cheating on your wife one time. I mean, once you've done it, it's easier the second, and the third, and the fourth. And unfortunately, it's like that with journalism. You have to stay fast and true to the rules.
Oh, it's the Rubicon in many ways.
Yeah, of course it is. And the first time you publish a guess, or make up a quote, it's the erosion of something sacred, and you can never come back from that. And that's the fundamental problem. Journalists were so adamant Trump was some sort of existential threat to American democracy that they decided that we're just gonna break the rules this one time, just to get him.
I think I said this in the past, but this is why I reference Richard in another area in this police field. That's why I've always been a big fan of Touch of Evil. It's the same concept.
Exactly.
It's the idea that you might even actually, by the way, be catching the guy who you know did do the crime, but because he's using corrupt methods, that is inevitably eventually going to lead to you doing it to the wrong person, where you didn't have it squared away and you had your own fucked up biases. It's just logical that will follow.
And it's an incredible power and a privilege to be a journalist and to have the public put their trust in you, that you're going to tell them the truth. It might not be what they want to hear, but it will be accurate. It might not be something that confirms their own beliefs, but it's something they need to know. And when you abuse that, it is just a vile corruption of what should be a sacred institution. And unfortunately, that institution these days is corrupt to the core, to the point where, I did a podcast which is on hiatus at the moment, and it was called Enemy of the People. It was literally take a news story, and then I would go into where the journalists got it wrong. And by the way, who the fuck am I? Right? Like, I shouldn't be able to out fact check the Washington Post or the New York Times or any other big masthead publication where they've got years of experience and credibility and resources and everything else, but they don't care, because they've given themselves this permission to be wrong on these topics, on these issues. They will run with dubious sourcing and what have you. And I did like a 2-hour episode where it was every piece of fictitious reporting about Donald Trump, every story that turned out to be wrong on Donald Trump in his first year in office. And it was 2 hours. And there's about...
I'll bet there was like 20 stories or something. There was a lot, I remember back then, mate.
Keep going.
It's actually one of the areas, by the way, is another detail that's worth it for historical record in esports to just point out. One of the most irritating things both Richard and I have had to endure is this notion that if someone can be proven to have lied about the president of the United States, if we point out, well, that's fucked up that the media's lied, that means we love Donald Trump and are showing we are loyal and support him. No, even that mentality gives away what Richard was talking about earlier. The notion that because you're against Trump, you will weaponize any lie or mistruth or factual inaccuracy just to make him look bad. By the way, spoiler, that makes you the bad guy, you dickhead. The brilliant thing I found about bad people is you can, like journalistically method, nail them for being bad. You could just nail them for what they actually did. And what they did is bad enough. You don't have to ever add
I say
more.
this all
Because that's
the
one of the
time.
things to this day that pisses me off. It's irrelevant what your politics are. By the way, absolutely, if someone lied about Biden in that way, I would also point that out. It doesn't mean I have any affection towards Biden whatsoever.
Yeah, I mean, look, the reality is as well, though. It's like you said. First of all, I say this all the time. If the person is bad and doing bad things, you just don't need to embellish it whatsoever. Like it's there on its face. But also, I hate the people that tell the lies, because you put me in the position of having to come out and defend somebody I can't fucking stand. Like, but we either believe in the truth as a sacred concept, right, or we don't. And as somebody that wanted to be a journalist because I had a pipeline into my brain of some sort of insane hodgepodge of shit like this and Hunter S. Thompson and everything else, and it just spoke to my sense of justice. Probably also having watched all the false reporting about the miners' strike when I was growing up, and the Sun newspaper denigrating the dead at fucking Hillsborough. There was probably some insane melange in my brain of events led me to the road of journalism. But ultimately, the thing that pulls all of those strands together is the truth has to matter. If the truth matters, then you
the truth matters for bad people too,
exactly.
Richard. In the same way as we give a defence to even murderers so that they can be appropriately judged on what, their intent, did they do it, how serious was it. In the same sense, it doesn't matter how bad you think the political figure is. If at the end of the day it is made up, that should be exposed too. It's not supposed to be, well, he is bad, so just fuck it, let that ride. Like, no, that actually goes against the ethos of this movie and what journalism was meant to be.
And it's kind of interesting as well, because I feel I saw a lot of this. American politics is sort of like a progressive spectrum, and so we wouldn't be so kind of like dismissive of like, well, of course the journalists lie about Trump. He's bad. We've got to do it. We've got to make up the stories, right? We did this a lot after the invasion of Iraq and Afghanistan. We came out and we said, well, Saddam Hussein's a bad guy, so yeah, it's good we got him, right? It's good we got him. It's good we got him. We removed the tyrant. Doesn't matter that the predicate for it was completely false. Doesn't matter that they had nothing to do with 9/11. Like, it just doesn't matter. Doesn't matter that intact Iraqi passport found in the flaming wreckage was the predicate to invade a sovereign nation, which I'm told is really, really bad these days. But we moved past it and we went, well, I'm going to rationalize the horrifying thing we've done by saying Saddam Hussein was, it's probably a net good he's gone, which...
By the way, my joke would be, imagine if in this exact movie, you just remix this movie and it turns out along the way, one of them, either the right moneyed interest comes or someone comes and explains some bigger geopolitical figure and they actually realise that they need to cover up this scandal so that Nixon can remain in power and a greater evil can't come in. That would be the logic. Like, the logic would be you would abandon your actual duty in front of you with the things that you are finding are wrong in order to do some, again, grand political idea, which is, at that point in time, you're not even a journalist, mate. You're just part of politics. You're just a propagandist of some kind,
Yeah, and like, it's like I say, it's just so hard because it's like, I remember the first time I watched this movie, it was kind of inspirational, like on some level, way back.
Of course it is, but like I said, it's journalism part. I mean, there are cheesy aspects of this,
Sure.
like the only time that there's light in this movie is in the Washington Post newsroom, and every other scene is super dark because
obviously the deep throat one
light.
himself is like he's obscured. Yeah. You can only hear him say,
in the garage. But like every scene where they're outside talking to people outside, and it's always dark, and they're searching through the shadows, but the light of journalism is on at the Washington Post. There's some really hokey things about this.
But
it's not subtle.
I mean, you also have to understand. I mean, part of why journalism was so easily corruptible was it's always had this unbelievable sense of like self-righteousness. And if you go through all the history and you look at all great American journalistic figures, historically speaking, and all the papers of record, the mythologizing around it is insane. I mean, like, right behind me, I've got the definitive biography of fucking Mencken up there. I couldn't be more of a journalistic cliche.
One of the all-time classics, though. He's one of the best. Some of the best quotes ever. Yeah.
I mean,
very dark perspective, though. But I tell you what, now you can see how prescient he was, Richard.
But like, you think.
By the way, that's also low-key one of my like pet fucking like turn-ons is when people are like way ahead of the pace of like calling shit out. Like, the shit where you can actually for real find old things that are like from Rome, Monty, where people are complaining like everyone has a book nowadays. And you're like, what? And there's one there's one that they found the other day where someone had something. I'm not even joking. It might have even been in like Sanskrit, where it was like someone complaining like coffee nowadays has got all stuff added to it. It's all watered down. You're like, what are you talking about? Like 3,000-year-old opinion or something, but it's sort of
that.
I mean, Roman graffiti is top tier, man. They were just complaining about all kinds of stupid shit, drawing dicks on walls. It's great.
But yeah, so the mythologizing around journalism is part of the problem. I mean, like, these journalists, I mean, like, again, you fucking see journalists and they've taken these like insane, craven, partisan positions for years, and they can't entertain the idea that like their political party, the people they're so enamored with, could be bad at all. And then they have the nerve. I mean, I think it was Jim Acosta or was it Saliza? I always get them mixed up. But anyway, one of the big two, no longer at CNN, now on Substack, fucking losers. People that used the Trump years to basically frame themselves as like heroes. They said journalists don't take a side. It's like, I am watching you take a side in real time
Same guy interviewing like an AI version of a dead person to just absolutely stand for
See, this is what I mean. We're right on the cusp.
It's timely, isn't it?
We're right on the cusp of like this just being a 4-hour-long diatribe about why.
No, the joke when we get to it is we even said after, because we watched it for this before to record, when we watched Network. Well, when I watched Network first, I remember thinking, what an out there film, like so conceptually like brilliant.
Real.
Now it's like it's just could have been written about now. It's crazy.
Yeah. I mean, I hate that phrase when people go, "It's more relevant now." It's like, no, it's just relevant because things don't change. But like put it this way, as a time capsule, this movie just makes me sad. Like All the President's Men, it just makes me sad.
Yeah. So do you think? Look, I understand this movie is cheesy, and I understand it's a feel-good film, and I understand that the end is bad, and we haven't even talked about the end yet. But do you hate this movie, or do you just hate what the ideal of journalism has become?
Let me tell you, I hate this movie. I think it's grotesquely irresponsible to show it to people now, and it should be banned. That's where I'm at with it. You shouldn't show this to people. It's
oh my god!
It is so divorced from reality now. It should, even though it's based on real events, it should just come with a disclaimer at the start. Like, this is a work of total fiction. There's no other responsible way to present this to the public. Like, people are going to become journalists if they watch this movie. They're going to think this is what you do. You don't do this anymore. Nobody does this anymore. The Washington Post is owned by a fucking billionaire.
I know what you mean. This is like, you are sort of selling people a false bill of goods. And the problem is, I actually would even argue that you can't do this anymore.
Exactly.
I actually think if you tried to do these things, you would literally be like, at best, just like suppressed. But it's like, you might actually just be killed. You might just straight up be killed.
Keep in mind that all the reporting that came out during the time, and again, this is obviously very key to me because this is when I first started. I was a young idealistic journalist. I watched 9/11 happen. I was a right-on lefty, and so there was this insane conflict of we're watching America kind of go off on one because they've been victim of a terrorist atrocity, but like where are we okay? What's a proportionate response to something like 9/11? And trying to process that through a leftist mindset, where I was kind of like, well, I was like the guy, ceasefire now, guys. I was like that, and what I watched the Bush administration do, it might be one of the most corrupt, and people throw this word around so flippantly these days, but if we're talking about fascistic. What they did they took the intelligence, the intelligence community, turned it against its own people. They divided.
No, they took the military. They did all Guantanamo Bay shit too. Like, they actually used the military against their own people, potentially treating them like terrorists. That's pretty. I know what you mean. Everyone used the term fascism. That's closer. Yeah. Like, you're using the state against the people.
Not just the Abu Ghraib scandal and everything else that happened in Guantanamo Bay, but also the fact that all of a sudden there was these things that just weren't like they were never on the table, and now they just were. And it was like torture. Right? Well, I can definitely torture a terrorist if we're going to waterboard you. That's fine. We're going to pretend that's not torture. We're going to change all of these definitions.
Think how dark that is, Rich. I think people always mistake that one. Like, I know a lot of people, thanks to that Christopher Hitchens video, have acknowledged that like it is bad, etc. No. This is how dark it got. They essentially designed a system of torture that if you haven't ever experienced it, you might just think it's not that bad. So they can secretly torture people and then said at the end it isn't torture, even though like the joke of that is, if no one knows, by the way, I'll give you a random aside. It's why if you ever try washing like a cat or a dog, you have to be really careful that the water doesn't shoot up its nose, because guess what? It's going to fight for its life to get the fuck out your hands if you do that, mate, because yes, it feels like you are drowning, it's going down, and your brain's telling you,
it was also a form of torture where if you were not familiar with it, which none of these people were, you would think you were dying, and they're just like, well, it's not really harmful, so it's not torture. But it's in that moment,
so think.
And they sold people on that. People just went like, yeah, I guess that makes sense. Go ahead then.
So think about it, right? We had a president who because of the intelligence failings around 9/11, had the worst terrorist attack on American soil of all time. He used that as a predicate to invade essentially two sovereign nations.
That's what he wanted to do anyway.
And overthrow Saddam Hussein. They completely. It was the biggest erosion of civil liberties in American history, probably since like the time that fucking Lincoln suspended habeas corpus, post Civil War, and on top of that, you then have someone in your administration having ties to the business that rebuilds the nation you've just reduced to rubble and getting vastly wealthy off it. And we know
all of a sudden Nixon getting some recording gear going doesn't seem that crazy.
That's what I'm saying. And it's like people were writing about this at the time, and now we know all of that, and we wheel Bush out. Well, he's a painter now. No painter could be evil.
We even still care about what he thinks about geopolitics, mate.
How the fuck?
That's also another moment, by the way, when I also knew certain people are just absolutely out of their motherfucking god. When some left-wing people were like, "What the hell?" Now I love George Bush. He is criticising Trump. Like,
when I think for me,
mate?
when I was like, okay, politics has totally jumped the shark, was when Kamala Harris was bragging about being endorsed by Dick Cheney, and lefties were all going, "Yes, Dick Cheney,
Dick Cheney,
Dick Cheney."
Remember, there was that thing where it was like implied, like he was like the devil himself, man. Like,
it's mental. So anyway,
bad,
the reason I'm saying all of this is like you just can't speak truth to power anymore. There is no truth to power. There just isn't. We've done the test case. We've had another generation of Woodward and Bernsteins. In the end, the Woodward and Bernstein. I mean, by the way, this applies to the original, the OG Woodward and Bernsteins. The modern Woodward and Bernsteins, they take the book deal and they take the primetime slot on network news, and they don't write the inconvenient stories that they know, or they write false ones in service, of a political party that they want to win. And by the way, no one is ever held accountable. It doesn't matter if it's proven that you're lying, whatever. If it's proven you're a corrupt politician, whatever. There isn't a vector for accountability in America anymore. It just is a runaway train. It's a runaway train of corruption and self-interest.
I know what you mean, Richard. The reason why I also agree, first of all, the movie itself just hasn't aged as well, unfortunately. But also, I do agree, in a weird way, I almost think it is like actual like ideological poison in the sense that it sends the exact wrong message, which is, the message in this movie, like I say, is if the truth can really be spoken at a loud enough volume and in the right way, then it will transform the world, it will fix everything, and you will be a hero. None of those things, as far as I can tell, are true. Like, you will actually probably ruin your career.
Your life,
You will not... no one will give a fuck. The worst thing is everyone will just go, huh? And then just continue on to the page 3 of the newspaper and not give a flying fuck about what you revealed. And finally, you absolutely will not get ahead in your career by doing this, by the way. Like, actually, unless you essentially like do the heel turn, like you're saying, you'll actually probably be maligned and put to one side, and you'll never have anything going on.
And so, I mean, look, obviously, that is me and Duncan watching this film, right? Like, your mileage is going to vary. There might even be, like, we might have some younger viewers.
If you really know nothing, it is an all right thriller. The problem there is just the pacing isn't that hard, is it? Like, it's a bit fucking...
Yeah, you might have some younger viewers, and this might be their touchstone to be like, you know what? I want to be a journalist. I mean, I wouldn't recommend it, guys. Like, I'm just telling you. I only wrote about a very tiny, small, niche corner of the world, and it's been a non-stop cycle of just like degradation and self-loathing, and you know too much and no one believes you, but when you're proven right,
bro, when stories in fucking esports are too like, well, that can't come out, well, then how are we ever going to do real stories in the world? Like, I know what you mean. The joke is in esports we have that talk all the time. People are like, well, this would really fuck up a lot of the money and the power. Like, yeah, it's video games. So if that's too high stakes, then we're fucked for real shit, mate. Well, that's off the table immediately.
And so, like, that's just the unfortunate reality about this film. It's a film that might. It's a film that is tethered to a time that it's not even it's not even a time. It's a universe that doesn't exist anymore. It's like it was plucked out of some idealistic version of society, dropped into ours, and we have to analyze it. and compare it and contrast it to what we have, and it doesn't make any sense. By the way, there's probably a lot of people that feel that way. I mean, I can almost understand the boomer, longing for days gone by, because you see relics and artifacts like this movie, and you go, maybe it wasn't so bad back then. Like, by the way, this was a scandal that supposedly stained the conscience of America. It was so shocking that the president could fucking engage in illegal activity and obstruction of justice and a cover-up. And now here we are in 2025, and we go, well, yep, that's the president's job. Like, that's what he does. Of course he does all those things. What the fuck are you talking about? Of course Obama fucking drone strikes an American civilian and then has his attorney general come out and go, anyone who was declared a combatant in the war on terror is fair game. And everyone goes, yeah, that's fine. Fuck knows what we're crying about with Donald Trump today. Who fucking knows? We've just let the bar fucking slide so far over that it's like, how do you ever pull it back? You can't. And unfortunately, this movie tells you can. And so it just feels like a work of like insane abstract fiction not fit.
By the way,
for
along those lines, this is a perfect time to bring up that, bro, the director of this film just makes like American idealism.
Yeah.
Think about the films he's made. He made like Presumed Innocent, which is against the idea like a lawyer, cares about the truth more than anything. To Kill a Mockingbird, classic like racial grievance thing, like what is the soul of our country? It's like a spy thing. Sophie's
Parallax
Choice, the
View,
ultimate moral dilemma.
That's
Another conspiracy one, Pelican
yeah.
Brief, mate. This guy's whole shit is just making these films that like essentially are for an America that doesn't exist. But it's how America sees itself. That's how
I mean, look.
It's what they wish they were.
And that's also an interesting kind of point, is like movies that are designed to serve as pieces of Americana and to, explore what America's soul can be. Like, I say this with all, like, this is genuine, this is earnest, right? I fucking love America. Like, I love America. I love its pioneering spirit. I love its history.
You have the same vibe, pretty soon. That's one thing in Hitchens you clearly connected over. You have a love of like what America could
exactly.
be. Right?
The nominal ideas behind America appeal to me. The idea of broad personal freedom, no tyrants, no kings to overthrow a fucking kingdom and forge your own destiny. How can you not be in love with that? And I do love America. I miss living there. I would have put it this way: if someone had come up to me and said, "Rich, like, I know like you got to leave and everything, but we've got this like insane loophole and you can just become an American citizen, but you got to burn your British passport and denounce your British heritage," do that in a fucking second. Like, wouldn't even give a fuck. Like, yeah, no problem. Holy shit, I get to be an American. This fucking rules. Give me a gun. Let's fucking go. Like, so I love the country. And when I watch movies like this, which are essentially historical artifacts of what America was, and I look at where America is, these things make me sad. They should make any American sad.
It's a downer. Which, it's funny enough, must be the opposite of what it felt like to watch the film when it came out. I bet when it came out, you were like, "Fuck, this is awesome. This is what could happen. This is how we battle back, guys. This is 70s. We're all optimistic and shit." No, now it's like, I know what you mean. Now it's like a dark. It's almost like it mocking the idea of what you could have as a society.
And like you said, if you then similarly believe in the importance and power of journalism, like I do, then this movie makes you doubly sad because it harkens back to a time in America where, like I said, there was accountability for everyone, no matter how far up the chain you went. Everybody knew at the time Nixon was probably corrupt and a bad dude, even though he got re-elected that second time. That was the McGovern failure.
It was a giga landslide.
But ultimately, like, that he had to resign. He had to resign. Yeah, he got pardoned. There wasn't any true accountability, blah, blah. But it's still, one person could have an impact on the person that is supposedly theoretically the highest, in the country. And it just isn't true anymore. It just isn't. And journalism is a corrupt institution that needs to be torn down and destroyed. It doesn't need shit like this gassing it up. I don't need the Washington Post. By the way, it's just been a bloodbath over at the Washington Post. They've fired so many people in the last few weeks at the time of recording this, and all of them deserve to get fired. All of them are scumbags. Like, there's not one person that ever a day in their lives held fucking, a genuine truth to power moment for a Democrat, because they just don't. They see themselves as in that team, and it's like this movie just fucking it just sucks because of that. Because when you're drawn into it. When you're drawn into it and you go, oh my God, are they going to get the guy? Oh, look at Dustin Hoffman. Oh, look, he's charming the woman with his good long hair. And you want to you're getting sucked into it. And then you go, wait a minute, though. This is all irrelevant now. This doesn't matter. This is just not linked to reality anymore. People that publish stories that speak truth to power die now. You just die. You publish the Panama Papers.
You get car bombed.
You get car bombed. Exactly. Yeah. Correct.
Or you magically hang yourself in your closet in that.
That is what happened to people who
Panama Papers.
That is what happened to the people who published the Panama Papers. They just got car bombed.
I mean, look, and without, because this probably is turning into an InfoWars episode. I don't fucking know, but like we just think about what we're doing now with this whole Epstein thing. Like, so we know what was going on, right?
Well, think about this, Richard. Imagine getting the scales. Here's a moment I'm going to criticise Trump.
Oh.
Get ready. How can I ever do that? He's number one booster. So are you ready? Let's do the scales, Trump, right? So on the one hand, Nixon's recording stuff. Oh, that's really bad. That's terrible, that. There might be an island where all like politicians and loads of people currently still active in politics went and fucked kids. Should we look into that? Who cares about that, man? That's some fucking old shit. Why are you still on about that? Like, that's where Trump himself is completely out of touch, isn't he? Like, again, what is political scandal if that is not political? And by the way, I'm sorry, the idea of but it wasn't recent doesn't work. Like again,
there's the statute of limitations on that.
I know.
Statute of limitations on Bohemian Grove,
Also,
dude.
it wasn't something that happened 150 years ago.
So
they're like, that's some old news, mate.
No, but also, this is the real black pill of that issue, right? So think about just how ridiculous it is.
Oh, and also, by the way, the news, also the press agreeing with him. Yeah, even though he himself might be implicated, let's not investigate that. He's right, actually. We should all agree with the president and just move on and not investigate stuff like that.
So we know that there was potentially a sort of blackmailing operation going on that involved child predation and abuse, and a wealthy guy who came into his wealth through very dubious means. Many people in his orbit died in mysterious circumstances. He himself gets arrested for it. He's named in multiple civil suits for having done these things, as well as obviously the criminal prosecution. While he's in jail, he commits suicide, where there was something like...
Oh, he even has connection, by the way, also, not just political, but like the royal family of England.
And it's like...
Well, not some like minor small fries fucker.
There were
like
80, in the report about how he was able to kill himself, there were apparently 80 safety checks that didn't take place. It just in the 24 hours that he so happened to die, including
and
missing
the video
footage,
was edited
right on the CCTV. And then Trump is like, don't worry, when I get in, I'm going to fucking blow the whole thing open.
Yeah.
And then they go, Donald, I don't know if you remember, but you went to that island that one time. No, right, well, turn it up. Turn it up. You've got Kash Patel.
It's even one of the things, one of the most annoying things ever is how many people just have a non-existent memory, right? This is why it will never fly, Donald Trump being like, why are you going on about Epstein Island? You yourself, before you got elected, said that thing of like, well, I think Bill Clinton's going to have a thing coming up with that Epstein soon. He's going to have to watch out. Why did you reference that if it was irrelevant in some shit from years ago? You know what I mean? Like, this is just literally about face. And then, changed your perspective 180.
I was watching CNN the other day for the podcast I do. And they were like, well, incredibly, it turned out the Epstein files was a nothing burger. Google searches are down 90% from 3 weeks ago. Nobody cares about it. And I'm like, well, there you go then.
Now, I love that as well. The idea that what makes a case worth pursuing and or prosecuting or exposing is whether people are Googling it enough. Like, how low is journalism good?
Well, I'll just put on my Blu-ray copy of All the President's Men. And this is my point, guys. It's like we didn't just cross one Rubicon. We crossed like 10 fucking Rubicons, sacked Rome, installed ourselves as fucking devil emperor for all time. It's over, guys. It's just over. It's a joke. It's a sick joke. I can't enjoy this movie anymore.
Can we talk about the end of this movie
why not?
and why it's bad?
It really is a shit sandwich, except the bread is made of shit as well. The end is ridiculous. What a terrible end to a movie. Like, never do this. By the way, Network kind of almost does the same thing, but like, it's funny when Network does it. It's harassment and flirting, right? All the President's Men, literally the end, it's like, right, we got him, we got the story. It's like the press fucking, all the headlines of all the things that come out of their reporting. 1973.
I know, but what's so funny about this movie is there just is no payoff, because especially, I would say, in retrospect, All the President's Men really drops the ball, because if you were in the 70s in the thick of it and you really care about who this Haldeman guy is, by the way, nobody fucking remembers who this Haldeman guy is. That's not what we remember about Watergate. So it's like, oh, we got this one guy, and they're throwing out all these names. The 5 guys who had control of the money, follow the money. Okay, we got there. And then it's like, oh, wait, we're just going to write on a typewriter that Nixon resigned and that all these people were tried. And then Nixon was pardoned by Ford. And it's like, I stayed here for this whole movie. Show me this stuff.
The slowest movie ever, Monty.
People
People just walk into desks.
I don't have a
People
problem with
calling almost like wrong numbers. Like, sorry. Like, what? And at the end, I don't even
I'm fine with that. I found that interesting. I was on board for that. Here's the thing. This movie is like 2.5 hours long. I wanted this movie to be 4 hours long, but I wanted to see the actual end of the story, because it ends at an almost arbitrary point in time where they're like,
Monty,
ran out of film in the camera, just write the rest of it on the typewriters.
The penultimate scene.
No, but the actual way the movie ends, though, here's the problem. I feel like that's an example of literally you sacrificed what you should do for a good film to try and make another pithy point about journalism, which is the idea that, like, it never really does end, does it? There's not really a big denouement. The story ends, you go on to the next thing, it gets exposed, it gets out in the world. Right? The real problem here is this, Monty. I'll tell you another detail about this film. The guy who wrote the screenplay to this film, William Goldman, listen to his resume, motherfucker. Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, Marathon Man, The Princess Bride, Chaplin.
He wrote the
Misery,
novel for The Princess
Magic.
Bride as well,
This
and
guy
the
just
screenplay.
cooked, bro. Yeah, he's just put a. So I'm telling you, this motherfucker definitely understands the beats of a film, how to do a tight story, a really well done ending.
He won an Oscar for
this
this
isn't a
as well,
rookie.
right?
So that means he's intentionally chosen this to be how the film ends. Like, this is what they wanted it to end as, on sort of a weird.
Here's the
off
problem.
note.
I wouldn't hate it if the bit with the headlines wasn't there. I think it would be a good ending then, right? And I'll explain what I mean. It's like you're just doing a slow zoom, and Richard Nixon is being sworn in for his second term, right? Which we know that this reporting has an effect.
Yeah, I don't hate that part of it at all. It's just the typewriter shit that tilts
exactly.
me.
And it's doing that slow zoom, and there's Woodward facing one way, hunched over a typewriter, and there's Bernstein facing the other way with his pillar between them. He's hunched over a typewriter, and they're continuing to write and report and be a journalist, even though, this reporting didn't necessarily impact the world in the way they would have liked, and Richard Nixon has been re-elected for a second time. Just end it there. Yeah. That's it. Gives me something to think about. Well, they did get Nixon in the end, but yeah, that's a sobering thought about the impact of journalism, right? That would have been fine. But then oh, fuck off with that. Like, I don't need that. Really, I can go and look up real life. Like, you're gonna tell me what happened in real life as the end of this movie. I get it. I'm there. I'm in the real world. I'm in the future. So yeah, fuck that. The ending sucks. I mean, it really does. I hate any movie, honestly, that ends with the fucking, like, expository shit on the screen. Don't end like that, like, and then in 1995, Thorin was arrested in Katowice, or, like, whatever. Like, I don't need
Well, it's like we said, it's even cheesy in fucking Hoosiers
Yeah.
when it's like, and then afterwards they're like, oh, whatever, bro. You already showed me the film.
Yeah, I know
for fuck's sake."
exactly. It's like, and they never won you.
Why am I
they
reading an
never won
epilogue
a
and all that?
championship again. Like, I don't need that. They put that at the end. I don't need that. Don't do that. Don't end a movie like that. Never end a movie like that with expository fucking dialogue on the screen. I don't need it. I don't need it. So yeah, unfortunately, the ending sucks. The beginning sucks as well. As a movie, like it sort of does almost everything wrong.
By the way, Richard, just for hilarity's but I'll point out, Richard picked this film.
Because you have to do it.
I know.
You have to do this one. You
How
have
can
to
you
do
do
it.
journalist
I know,
mark
but
and then it's like the
he's
most
not.
influential journalist?
No, and by
No,
the
we
way,
have
we
to
didn't.
make
Richard
it.
didn't.
Watch this.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Richard didn't pick this film. We all have to do. We all agreed we had to do this film. You can't escape the gravitational pull
You
of
can't-
all
I
the
mean, look,
president's
it's
men. If you're
everything.
doing a
It's-
journalism arc, it's
meeting
mandatory.
people in a fucking alleyway. It's the use of deep throat to talk about sources. It's the fact every scandal has gate put at the end. It's follow the money. This movie couldn't be more influential. It just sucks because it's like I say, it's from a fucking universe. It's from an alien planet. It doesn't hold up in any way, shape, or form to what you know to be true about the world in which you live. And by the way, there's probably going to be people watching this going, "What the fuck? What is this? Like, what is this? Like phones plugged into a wall, no internet. Like, why didn't you just Google it? Why did they go to the library? Why you want a microfiche?" You know what I mean? It's also technologically just an aberration. It just doesn't exist. None of this is how modern journalism works anymore. If you want to try and have something, like the spirit of what the journalists do, the perseverance, it is like that. It is like that. It really do be like that. Sometimes you just have to, and also checking in with sources multiple times, fake conversations. Oh, you've had a kid, have you? Yeah, nice one, yeah. I don't care, I'm using you for a story, but fine. Let's pretend to care about your life for 5 fucking minutes so I can use you in the future. You know, it does nail on some stuff that's just real. But unfortunately,
And mega, as we say, mega influential. You
Yeah.
never get the Newsroom and a lot of other kinds of things with this style of even the process of how things are done. That in itself is quite interesting in its
Yeah.
own way, even if now it's been played out a million times.
yeah,
over.
but it's what I mean. It's like, look, if you've ever watched an episode of The Simpsons,
I mean, in fact, we didn't reference, forget even like that shit. How about just obvious things like Spotlight and
Yeah.
all the other
Well, of
movies
course.
about journalism like this are all clearly all homages to this movie to some degree.
everybody loves the idea of the little guy beating the big guy, and then truth is his sword, and words are his shield, you know, whatever. Everybody loves that shit, but like it is just bullshit now. It's just total bullshit. Like you'll get maybe one journalistic story. By the way, this is how far removed we are from all the president's men. I mean, like, look what we did to Julian Assange. You know, like hey, look, America did all these heinous crimes. Boo, boo! You work for Russia. I assure you I don't, sir. Lock him up. Cool. Sick. Love this version of reality. So now, unfortunately for me, I know on some level this is a good film. I know on some level it's got exceptional performances in it. I know, like, I mean, yeah,
Great
I mean,
acting.
but the acting is fucking stellar. Like, it's really understated. It's really low key and understated. There's one or two silly scenes.
Dialogue is
Dialogue
fantastic.
is great. You definitely don't have Sorkin because, by the way, have you ever seen that Newsroom? You ever seen that one? The one he did,
Yep.
like, you know, he did The West Wing and he did the spin-off and it was the Newsroom or whatever the fuck.
I was not a fan.
Fucking hell, when what's he called? Is it Jeff Daniels gives that fucking monologue? But
Jeff Daniels.
like fucking Team America spews. It's just so fucking. That wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for this film. So you know you got to take it. Unfortunately, this film has a dubious legacy in my eyes, and its true legacy is it misled a bunch of people into thinking journalism would be a good career. Like that's its most heinous of crimes. So you know, I'd watched it not that long ago out of morbid curiosity. I watched it probably at the start of the year, so I kind of knew what I was getting into. It wasn't fresh. this rewatch was painful. I do like that in the 70s you could just make a meandering fucking slow movie of people just in rooms talking into phones.
That is the number one takeaway I have from almost all these 70s films. It's like, holy fuck, the producers were really liberal with what they let you get away with. Like, they're not doing any of that shit of, like, we've got to cut it for an action beat and, like, you know, couldn't we, like, trim some of this stuff? They're just letting scenes fucking breathe constantly, mate. Everything's super slow.
And like, you know, that's nice. And look, obviously as well, in terms of, like, its critical acclaim, it's considered quite controversial because this is, as I said at the start, this is the year Rocky wins Best Picture. And by the way...
That is, by the way, even though in its own way, Rocky is a brilliant film, well written, well acted, it is at the end of the day a film, Monty, where it's just someone... Stay down, Rock! I won't! I'll let him hit me more! And then the American cinema goes, right, what do we give the Oscar to? Do we give it to All the President's Men, an expose of the corruption within the government, but how Americans will still fight for the truth, and that is what our Republicans do? Or do we give it to Network, a scathing but insightful and prescient sort of like attempt to deconstruct what media is and the landscape moving into? No, what about that movie where he punched him in the face again? Oh,
you don't even know how bad it is, because you want to know what else was nominated for Best Picture.
What does that imply about Hollywood?
Right. So you had All the President's Men, you had Network,
Taxi Driver
this year, mate. So like a Rocky won Best Picture. So
how did Rocky win?
No, it is a crime. It is a crime. But what?
Did the other films just like split the vote in a weird way?
No, because it was like basically, look, there's a lot wrong with this. Like when we get to the Network episode, you know, best supporting actor, they nominated Ned Beatty from Network over Robert Duvall.
He's in the movie for like 5 minutes.
Like, what are you doing? So it was a really weird awards this year. But I will say, like, it did get best screenplay based on, you know, best adapted screenplay. So it kind of like is held up and revered. Jason Robards got his best supporting actor because he played Ben Bradley. The editor guy, and like I say, I always had a soft spot for him because I really liked Magnolia, even though we eviscerated that film when we did the review. But it's just one of those. It's like, unfortunately, this film will never go away. It will never go away. It will always, and much like the Woodward and Bernstein, will always be like a fucking phrase designed to denote good journalism, even though they themselves were hacky bums by the end. This movie will always be held up as like some sort of shining example of like, well, we can get them in the end, and this is America, and everyone's accountable. Doesn't matter if you're a president, doesn't matter if you're and none of it's true. So what do you do with that? You know, how do you metabolize that? And unfortunately for me, I can no longer stomach this film. I just can't. I can't do it. So unfortunately, I know on some level this is an 8 out of 10, right? It obviously is an 8 out of 10. It's got everything I would usually love in a movie, but
you know, Richard. Sometimes you can like bad movies and you can dislike good movies.
No,
that's fine.
But this is, unfortunately, I have skipped forward from not liking it, finding it a bit hawky, poking criticisms in it, thinking it hasn't. I'm just over here with the straight haters. Like, I detest this film now. I detest this film. It's irresponsible garbage, is what it is. Irresponsible garbage. Fuck Carl Bernstein. Fuck Bob Woodward. Fuck William Goldman. Fuck Alan Pakula, or whatever his fucking name is. Fuck everyone involved with this film, and especially, most of all, fuck this film. That's just where I'm at now.
Well, on that note, we'll see you next week for Network. Till then.